Next slide, please. I want to thank all of you who were able to make it to the meeting tonight and to make sure that you know that this meeting is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please make sure you keep your camera off and your microphone muted. We know that there are many people who can't join us today. If you have any friends or neighbors who are not able to join us, please share what you learned or direct people to our project website for them to visit to view the recorded meetings and presentations when their schedule allows. They can also feel free to reach out to me directly with their thoughts. And if you haven't had a chance to check out the project website, please go ahead and do that. I will add the link to that in the chat for you in a little bit. And next. So we want to make sure this conversation feels accessible to everyone and that each of you feels comfortable sharing your questions and comments. Please be respectful and mindful of others' times so everyone has the opportunity to participate. Once you have submitted or asked a question, please wait until others have had an opportunity to ask questions before submitting another one. If you would prefer, you can always set up a conversation with me. Please contact me through my email, which I will also share in the chat. Next slide. We would like to hear your thoughts. That's why we are here today. And there are several ways you can engage with us tonight. At the end of the presentation, we'll open up the floor for discussions for questions and comments. If a question pops up in your head during the meeting, feel free to add it to the chat so we can make sure to answer it during the discussion time. Please only use the chat for comments or questions regarding this project. Also, if you have a question or comment during discussion, feel free to raise your hand as well so we can get everyone for discussion. For those who may not be familiar with Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you should see what looks like a text bubble. This is the chat feature. To raise your hand, you can click on the reactions button and raise that action. Raise hand action there is there. I think this takes care of all the housekeeping information. We can go on to the agenda. So today we will review the project team and the project overview. We will do a quick overview of what was shown in the first two meetings and a summary of the feedback that we collected from those meetings. We will then spend a majority of the time talking about specific details about the design, final design concept of the park. Next. Sorry, hello. I realized I forgot to introduce myself. I am Priyanka Vinkina. I'm the project manager from the Boston Parks Department for the Robert G. Lawson Park. With me tonight is Michael McMillan, Community Outreach Coordinator at the Parks Department. We have been with this project coordinating with William Moose from the Boston Transportation Department for the Atherton street raising and surrounding project that they have been working on. Office of Neighborhood Services, you have Asha Janya for Roxbury Liaison and Caroline Peters from Jamaica Plain Liaison. And our design team with us here today is Kyle Zick, a landscape architect. From there, we have Kyle Zick and Tracy Hudak. Next. A quick overview of the project. We started site analysis in October of last year and had our first community meeting in November. And we have hit our target dates for community meetings and are on track with the current schedule to bid the project out in fall and start construction in early spring 2026. We get asked a lot of how design decisions are made, so I want to share this diagram with you. Some of these items are community input, such as our community meeting tonight, safety and regulatory guidelines, such as ADA, City of Boston priorities, and parks and recreation goals. These all inform park design. Next, with that, I turn it over to the design team.
Thanks so much, Priyanka. I'm Tracy Hudak with Kyle Zick Landscape Architecture. And just in case folks are joining us for the first time tonight, we're working on renovating Robert G. Lawson Park, which is sort of this upper parcel north of Atherton Street. And then we're also looking at how that can be better connected to Atherton Plaza, which currently houses primarily the Blue Bike Station just south of Atherton at this major intersection with Columbus and Washington. So just to remind folks, our scope of work for this project, we're looking to do the design and construction of the park so that it activates it to promote positive interactions among the community in this space. We want to better connect Robert G. Lawson Park itself, which you see in the photo below, sort of in the background there with those granite circle parts. Connect that better with Atherton Plaza, which is kind of in the foreground there with the Blue Bike Station. There's a good deal of tree cover in these two spaces now, and so we want to make sure that we work to improve the health of those trees and then also improve the tree canopy in the two spaces. Priyanka mentioned regulatory requirements playing into this, and so we want to make sure that we are improving accessibility and that people can move throughout the park without any barriers for those with mobility issues. And then finally, of course, it's Robert G. Lawson Park. So we want to make sure that we are honoring the legacy of Robert G. Lawson. So this is sort of the mini agenda for the design update portion. So we're going to talk about what we heard from folks up through the January community meeting, and then also the survey on the design options that was open for a couple weeks after that. What we heard on the tribute elements, which we also talked about at the January meeting, and then they were in that survey. And then we'll detail sort of how we responded to the comments that we heard, and then show you the big reveal, the final concept that that we want to talk through with you all so that we can move forward into final design and park construction. Okay, so if we look at the big themes from community meeting number 2, which was again in January, and then the design survey that was open thereafter. So across the bottom, in case folks are new or just to jog your memory, we showed 3 options in January. And across the bottom, there were 1, 2, and 3. And so when we looked at all the feedback, both from the meeting and then also the survey that followed online after, primarily the curvilinear designs were more popular. So those were options 1 and 3. But generally, whenever people chose a specific option, one of the common comments that they chose it was because they felt it was more welcoming. So we, took that to be that the design needed to be welcoming no matter which sort of these schemes we started modifying. There was also people expressed the desire for a shade canopy, particularly sort of in this that provided some shade where there wasn't tree cover already. But there was also a consensus that folks wanted it to provide shade, but not necessarily shelter from rain or snow, so that it didn't become somewhere that folks would stay for extended periods of time. They wanted it to be somewhere you enjoyed while you were in the park. There was also definitely an emphasis on people wanting to feel protected from road traffic and enhancing or increasing the amount of green space that was presently there. Some more items that we heard during that meeting and the follow-up survey was that people wanted there to be space for the types of community events that occur here, and also that it was welcoming on a day-to-day basis for people who just want to sit there and maybe have lunch, check email on their phone, stop with their kids as they're walking through the neighborhood. There was also a preference, and this was shown in both options 1 and 2, where the Blue Bike Station would be located in Atherton Plaza rather than taking space from the Robert G. Lawson Park proper. And so basically to locate the Blue Bike Station all together in Atherton Plaza. So we heard that. We also heard that the final design, even though this isn't anything like a playground space, it wanted to be lively and playful and available and interesting for people of all ages. So that we should also consider sort of multiple ages in kids when we looked at this. And there was definitely an interest in providing appropriate lighting as a means of increasing safety. And we covered way back in the first meeting the fact that the lighting is pretty spotty right now. And so there was people were still raising this issue, and so we made sure that we looked at that when we looked at the final design. And then finally, and most importantly, ensure the park honors Robert Lawson, which plays into the next slide. So we also talked about tribute elements, both at meeting number 2 and the survey that followed. And so some key points, we talked about sort of 5 categories of tribute elements, and the most popular ones seem to be elements that represented his profession, which was a key part of his life and his legacy. And then also people were interested in sort of seeing more quotes from Mr. Lawson, which some of those are present in the park now, in those sort of wooden seats that are sort of in between those granite blocks. But to be honest, all the ideas received pretty positive support. The other ones were sort of including highlighting elements about his biography, highlighting the location of the barbershop, and then also words about Mr. Lawson from other folks. Generally, when people talked about incorporating these elements, they wanted it to be sort of subtle and tasteful, and ensure that the park was enjoyable even if you didn't know him, but that it gave you the opportunity to learn about him. So along the bottom of the page were kind of some images that we felt represented the kinds of things people were talking about. So introducing something into the pavement, whether that's words, sayings, the name of the park, etc., into something on the ground plane. People also expressed interest in sort of using the tree surrounds to highlight Mr. Lawson. The center image shows, some of these inlays that you can put into the pavement. And then a lot of people will recognize the image on the right, which was quite popular, about the chairs that are sort of reminiscent of barbershop chairs. And so I think folks will be happy. You'll be seeing those in a few minutes. But what we wanted to cover also is just how we responded to these comments. And you're going to see this when we look at the images that we've created, the model that we've created of the final concept. But just so you're on the lookout for these sorts of things, we created a cantilevered canopy so that there aren't posts in the center of the plaza, which keeps it open and available for events, but it does provide a good amount of shade. And we also relocated the canopy so that it provides shade primarily on summer mornings and afternoons, which is sort of the times when you need it most. That cantilevered canopy plays into this central open area, which would remain available for events and activities, again, without the posts there, so that helps too. And then we concentrated seating areas primarily around the perimeter, and that will be, facilitate the times when the park is generally being used by individuals, small groups, families. The Blue Bike Station, we did keep it over in Atherton Plaza to sort of concentrate that activity and place it nearest to the street, which makes a lot of sense for just the way people are going to use the Blue Bike Station. We introduced a secondary entrance on Columbus Avenue that is further north. So what that does is it's going to allow a little more foot traffic through the space, which is going to help with safety and keeping it lively. That access will have a few steps. It won't be accessible, but there will be a complete accessible route through the park space. The vegetated buffers, we heard loud and clear that it was important that those be pretty substantial and that we utilize the existing trees that were there. And what that does for us is helps minimize the impact of the traffic, and will also provide a space, if it's desired, for instance, the Friends of Robert G. Lawson Park to have community plantings if they want to continue to do that. We also were able to increase the amount of green space compared to what we have now, and also increase the overall number of trees. And then because we did hear about lighting and safety, we have plan to add in a number of lights within Robert G. Lawson Park to create a more even lighting situation at night, which will help again with feelings of safety and eliminate sort of areas that are super dark and super light. And then in terms of the tribute elements, a note that you're going to see some of these components when we look at the model, but the very specifics of what, for instance, the pavement might say is going to be primarily worked out through consultation with members of the family, et cetera, as we move through design development. But you will see that we did incorporate seats reminiscent of barbershop chairs. And we did keep this element of the line in the pavement pointing toward Lawson's barbershop, as we heard that was, basically a very defining part of his life. And so we might use that line to include the park name or quotes from Mr. Lawson. But again, we're going to work through the details of that with a smaller crowd of folks. And then again, the Blue Bike Station is going to be in planning for it to be in Atherton Plaza, keeping the larger park area focused on Mr. Lawson and community gathering. And then finally, in the very next slide, we'll show you this, the park colors. I know there was some back and forth about, which colors people felt most drawn to. And so what we've done is taken the colors from a mural on the side of Lawson's barbershop, and we'll show you that in just a moment. So I think I'll turn it over to Kyle to kick off the views of the model.
All right, thanks, Tracy. I'm Kyle Zick with KZLA. So yeah, exactly what Tracy just mentioned. We started with inspiration from the mural on the barbershop and thought we could pick some of those colors and they could be incorporated in the different features of the park. So you'll see that a couple of the yellows, the brown, and the blue we're drawing from, and we'll show you in other views how that's being incorporated. All right, so we're going to start with a plan view. Just for orientation, you have Columbus Avenue on the right, Washington at the bottom, and that's Atherton that's cutting between the two parks. We have the Robert G. Lawson Park on the upper part and the Atherton Plaza on the lower part of Atherton Street. And we'll have plenty of views to walk you through this, but I'll just talk through the different elements starting at the top of the page on the Robert G. Lawson Park. So we have some trees proposed, and we want to keep existing trees, but add trees. And these trees would be up against that big brick wall to help bring that scale down. And as we heard at the last meeting, we wanted to have a second entrance off of Columbus Avenue. So that's that next label there, secondary entrance. And then there's an island basically that is between those two entrances off of Columbus. There would be existing tree there. And then to the left of that tree is a shade canopy that allows you to sit in the shade. And we did a shade study throughout the year, but particularly in the summer when you're likely to have more events, to find out where you really have gaps in your shade that trees don't provide, and that's pretty much the location. We also have a proposed tree just below the other entrance off of Columbus Ave. Then we're going to keep sliding down to the street itself. I think the raised street will be done by BTD, Boston Transportation Department. The timing of that, we'll still find out if that's before or after the park, probably more likely after the park construction, and they'll be responsible for that. The Blue Bike Station would be all on the Atherton Plaza side, closest to Washington Street, and we'll be keeping the existing trees in that plaza. There'll be some furnishings on that in that plaza as well of the same materials and color to relate it and connect it to Lawson Park. And then kind of crossing back over the street, Tracy mentioned the barber chairs. We'll show you exactly what those look like and where they are. And then we have other seating throughout the perimeter of the park. All right, so the first three-dimensional view, it's a bird's eye view. So we're hovering over the intersection of Columbus, Atherton, and Washington, looking at Atherton Plaza on the left and Lawson Park on the right. So I already mentioned Atherton Plaza. The Blue Bike Station is closest to Washington Street. And then we have a gathering area with some tables and chairs and seating surrounded by existing trees. And it pulls that seating away from the retaining wall that's at the municipal parking lot. And on the Lawson side, one thing you may notice is where we see a gray line coming from a circle in the park. So that is the line that points from the barber chairs in the park directly to the barber shop. And then you'll get a hint at the entrance, the closest entrance off of Columbus, that the shade structure is just inside the park. and the other features we're going to talk about in other views. So here we are at the entrance off of Columbus, closest to Atherton. There would be the typical Boston Parks park sign, with their logo in green and beige color scheme. But we want this entrance to be nice and wide and inviting, drawing you into the center of the park. You can see activity. You're drawn also by the color of the canopy, the shade canopy, and there's tables and seating there. And in the distance, you see a hint of blue. I'll show you those are the barber chairs that we'll look at in other views. Atherton Plaza's in the background, kind of behind the car you're seeing that's driving on Atherton. So here we're at the other entrance at Columbus, the one that's closest to the adjacent neighbor with the big brick wall. There would be a couple steps here because of the grade change, but you have seating off to the right, some new trees to the right. You can see the shade canopy that anchors that island in the center between those two Columbus Avenue entrances. And then again, the hint of blue, the barber chairs that are part of other seating in that overall park space. So here we are more in the center part of Lawson Park. The shade canopy I've mentioned in the past few views, so you can see that it provides shade directly over seating. And that seating has some tables and places to rest your phone or your coffee cup or something like that. But there's a paved space in the middle there that's very flexible that can be used for events, gathering. You can set up tables, you could have tents there. But then focusing on these blue chairs, these are the symbolic of barber chairs. And we would hope that there could be events there, where there could be haircuts for the public in the park. There's a circle designated in the pavement in that line, again, that points to Lawson Park. And we're expecting that those tribute elements will be part of this line and on that directionality. You can also see some other seating in this view. So sometimes you're sitting on a seat wall with a wood seat in a back. There's also metal chairs that would be anchored that you can pivot, but there's tables as well, trying to provide as much flexibility as possible. So people of, groups of different sizes or individuals and people who want to be kind of in the heart of the activity or off to the edge, that's all provided. This view from Atherton Street shows also that entrance there that we are preserving the existing tree. We'll protect it with a tree grate. And it's also part of just providing a nice shaded entrance into the park.
Oh, sorry, we're going the wrong way.
There we go.
Sorry.
So across Atherton Street, you can see the municipal parking lots in the background. It's represented kind of white and gray. The blue bikes are closest to Washington on the left-hand side. And then we have this small plaza that's pulled away from that wall that has the same variety of seating. Sometimes it's on a wall with wooden seat bench tops, sometimes with a back, and then the table and chair as well. And then there's some planting as a buffer between that space and the retaining wall. We've seen this view. And then kind of going back to the overhead view, just as a reminder, and then I think the next view will be, we're going to talk about how tents could be set up, for special events, markets or whatever. Next slide. So we can fit, this is suggesting 5 tents, and that avoids all the existing furniture. I think you could probably even do more. This is assuming the road is open, because I think for bigger events, you could have the road closed and have a food truck or tents, oriented to the road at Atherton as well. I think we have some eye-level views also to give you a sense of how that works. These tents can work perfectly well and not conflict with the seating or the shade canopy and still feel like you have plenty of space to move throughout the park. So we covered a bit of ground, but we have plenty of time to be able to talk through the design options. If you have comments about feedback we received or how we've translated that feedback into design revisions, or if you have thoughts on tribute elements as well, we'd love to get your feedback.
Peter has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the great presentation. I think it was it's very well done. I love the design. I think the one question that I have, I think I brought this up at one point before, but was maybe to have like a fence or something else where the municipal lot is over there, so that you don't see a parking lot while you're in that nice space over there. I don't know if you had considered that at all.
Yeah, I think one of the things we have to think about, and we can that fence, sorry, that wall is not actually Parks property. So I know it's a city lot. So I will try to work out what can be done with that fence. We're still in the talks of that, trying to figure that out. That's still on our minds. To kind of soften that edge, we have added plantings back there, so it's not accessible actually from this edge. And Kyle, if you want to add more.
Yeah, I think, Peter, it's a good comment. And like Priyanka said, because it's different departments in the city, we have to kind of coordinate more. But we also have to think about, if we add something to that wall, how can it be durable so that cars pulling in don't damage it? When we have snow removal, how do the snow plows not damage it, or snow storage damage it? So there's some things we need to work out with other city departments to be able to pursue that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you.
Chris?
Oh, I think Juan Carlos was before me.
Sorry, thank you. Juan Carlos?
Hey, Chris, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris, for allowing me. Juan Carlos Farrufino, Executive Director of the Eggleston Square Main Streets. I wanted to bring up something that is currently happening. We are meeting with merchants and BPD to try to figure out, if you've seen the area, as you know, during the summer when the weather gets nicer, people hang around the square, the corner of Columbus Avenue in Washington. I'm in front of the park right now, and I seen the activity. So the dilemma we have is that we want a welcoming park, but at times we think maybe not that welcoming, where people can hang around. And you should know that, we've been doing some research. There's really nothing that the police department can do to move people away from the park. If they're sitting, there's no law that says you cannot sit, right? And the congregations are getting bigger, and the weather's not even that nicer. So from the designing perspective, is there any, I don't know, any way to discourage long-term hanging around? A camera, could we contemplate that and working with the police department on what would be helpful for them to monitor the area in a better way? It is something that right now we are trying to figure out. Susan and I have been working with a few of the neighbors around, and we don't have an answer yet. But given that we are in this planning and designing process, maybe part of it would be to make it so people don't hang around for too long. About the parking lot, there's no maintenance. It seems like, I don't know how often the city comes and cleans, but I'm here right now. It looks very dirty. There's a lot of littering, and so I think part of the planning should be, how often this place is taken care of, who's in charge of it, etc. So I just wanted to bring that up as of what's happening right now at the plaza.
Thank you for that. we want to be cognizant of parks being available for everyone. We certainly don't want to be, yes, we understand there's certain activities happening at the park, and how do we discourage that? You know, we've pulled the features up into the foreground, so there's not really creating pockets of spaces for people to gather. I think right now there's activity happening near the back end where there is space for it to be hidden, but you know, pulling seating and other options up further into the public realm will help with some of that activity. And in terms of maintenance, this park will be under the regular parks maintenance. It should also already be, and you know, it'll be under that routine, so it'll get that regular parks maintenance. In terms of the parking lot, I'm not quite sure which department is the owner of that lot. I think maybe a 311 would help with that as well. That's yeah.
Yeah, and Priyanka, the other suggestion I have is, can we work with the police department to get input from them as of to what would be a good way for them to, you know, monitor the area? I'm thinking a camera, which I see one there, but
There is one, yeah.
I don't know who handles that, right? I don't know if the department has access to it.
I think that is the police department that handles that. We spoke with them at the beginning. They provided some views. It points right now into Lawson Park, but we can certainly have conversations with them on maybe another camera or what they feel would be right to put in here.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Okay, I guess I'll jump in now. First off, thank you. I like the design. I really like how you've incorporated a lot of the feedback that had been given. I particularly like creating that green barrier between the Atherton Plaza and the wall of the parking lot. I would echo Juan Carlos's concerns. I also think Peter's suggestion is an excellent one. If there's any way of putting some sort of fence on top of that wall so you're not looking directly into the parking lot, that would be ideal. Understanding that's technically out of the scope of this park. Two questions that I had. First is, what happened to all the color? All the three designs you proposed had some amount of color on the ground, including on Atherton Street, and I don't see any of that anymore. And the second question is, in terms of the seating, looks like the barbershop chairs will be fixed in position, but you have a number of freestanding tables and chairs. I do worry a little bit about theft, so I just wonder how that's handled as well.
Yeah.
Sure. Sorry, Kyle, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, I was just hoping we can go to one of the three-dimensional views to help answer this too.
Yeah. I'm going to talk quickly about the Atherton, the color in the plaza. We have been working closely with public BTD and in talks with Public Works as well. BTD is going to be coming in and raising the street. There's several things that we have to think about in terms of adding some sort of feature to the street ourselves. Is it will be a temporary installation because BTD is still trying to work out with Public Works how any kind of treatment to this piece can be maintained by Public Works. We have to think about snow plows. We have to think about salting. All those types of factors are being considered. And, you know, it came to the point of, how do you want to utilize our budget? Is it in a temporary treatment of the street, which is going to be taken apart maybe in a year or 2 years, whatever their timeline is? Or do we want to utilize that budget somewhere else as well? Kyle, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, a couple things. So you had 2 points, color and then the furniture. So on the color, I mean, this view does show we have 2 shades of warm color, yellow and kind of yellowy orange, and then the barber chairs are blue. And then in terms of the furniture, so we do have seat walls that have individual seats mounted on them. Sometimes they don't have seats, sometimes they have a back, sometimes they don't. But then the tables and chairs you see, the tables would be anchored, and actually the chair would be tethered on one corner with a stainless steel hoop. So they can't be stolen, but you can be moved a little bit just for more comfort.
Okay, thank you.
Susan?
Thanks. Yeah, I also want to thank you for repeating back the comments and how you responded to them. I think that's really helpful. And you've actually answered some of my questions about the chairs. I want to comment on two things that other people brought up. One is, I guess our hope is that by drawing other people here, having sort of competition and acceptable behavior going on, that'll kind of discourage unacceptable behavior. I think that really is the only way to sort of discourage bad behavior, is to have something else happening there. The other thing is, I'm a little concerned about the idea of a fence, actually, because or maybe the fence needs to be somewhat transparent, sort of like the trellises that are up there. And the reason I'm concerned is that if you have a wall there, is that going to inadvertently create more sort of places where you can't see people? So when you're walking down the street, you're not going to see the people in the park until you get there, or you might not, and it might make the parking lot less safe because you're not able to see into it. So I think there's a little bit of trade-off there that might want to be considered. And I think planting or a fence that's a little bit transparent, that it kind of blocks the view, but still allows some transparency so that you're getting some safety there. The one thing you did do that I thought, I actually initially advocated for the second entrance, but I thought there were more people who didn't want the second entrance. So I'm sort of curious how the other people from the community feel about that. I personally feel like it makes it safer because people are cutting through and you don't have a little cul-de-sac, but I know there was concern about having more separation between the streets. So I I heard a lot of pushback on that, and I'm just kind of curious how other people on the call feel about that now. But otherwise, I like it. And I'm also wondering about the color. Maybe if we can't put it on the street, maybe we can up that a little bit in the pavement, or the bands of color that you do have, or something in there, because otherwise it looks like a pretty wide expanse of white. And what is that actually pavement material in the park? Is it all concrete? Is it pavers that has
concrete.
some texture? Maybe there's a way to get a little subtle texture in there or some variation.
Yeah, the pavement is
Those
concrete. There will be, we can have a pattern with the joint lines, but because we're trying to stretch the dollar, and that's like the single highest expense is the pavement, where the concrete allows us to do other things too. But kind of going back to some of your other questions or comments, one thing I would be interested in getting more feedback from, we've heard with that retaining wall at the municipal lot to have a fence to screen cars. But I think, Sue, you were starting to say, well, maybe not because of visibility. So then is the issue, is it screening cars the most important thing? Or is it having some railing or low fence there to prevent sitting on the wall and providing separation from the municipal lot to the park?
It's a good question. I'm going to defer to people who wanted the fence to answer that.
I would say yes to both. We want to discourage sitting on the wall, but also a little bit more of separation. It doesn't have to be completely opaque, in my opinion. It's fine if you can see through it, but something that makes it feel like you're a little separated from the parking lot.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say the same thing. I think it should be, it could be something like those trellises over there, you know, whatever it is. For me, it was to obscure the cars in the parking lot, and you know that it's not always a nice view over there, but I take Sue's comments for sure. That's definitely, safety is also a top priority.
You know, Sue also mentioned the second entrance on Columbus, and Tracy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know we had different thoughts on that at our last community meeting, but the survey, people weighed in on that as well.
Yes, and there was people that were interested in it, wanted to make sure it read as secondary and not as the main entrance. So for example, I think in these graphics we're showing it's shown as 6 feet wide, for example, as opposed to the main entrance, which is just over double that.
Thank you. I do want to go back to the wall and the fence just for a second here, and just to manage expectations. As I mentioned, this is not a Parks property, Parks owned wall. So we would have to get permissions from the right department if we have to do if we need to do some treatment for the wall. It could be a hard no. I don't know, and we also don't know what the condition of the wall is to even install a fence on it. We certainly wouldn't want to put a fence in front of the wall. I think that really just would be kind of a maintenance nightmare with trash and debris just getting stuck between the wall and the fence. So I just want to manage expectations a little bit on how the wall can be treated.
Just so you know, the wall is in okay shape, and it's like a stone, flat stone. So I'm assuming that will have to be changed if we want to have a fence.
Yeah, I'm not sure, and that would have to go through a whole different department to get approval for that, to do that. So I guess let's put a pin in that for now and go on. Robert, you had your hand up?
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for showing these concepts, and thank you to Priyanka, Tracy, and Kyle for just all the effort that's went into this. Everything I think looks great, and I think I speak on behalf of my family, but I'll let them chime in if they have any comments as well. But I just had a couple of I have a couple of questions just regarding to kind of add on to Juan Carlos's concern. He mentioned the signage. I think that it would be beneficial to have some type of signage, maybe in terms of like no grilling, or I don't know what the exact laws are that pertain to these parks, but I would think that you wouldn't want any grilling in the park, any grills brought to the park for fire hazards. So maybe like no grilling, crime, subject to fines in that sense. Just to kind of just a visual to kind of keep people on alert that this is a safe space, it's a community space, and whether there are whether there's surveillance or not, that there will be consequences if you don't follow the rules. And then for the trees, I guess I was just wondering, are these trees going to be planted fully mature, or are they seedlings? Who is taking care of the vegetation around the park? Is there a sprinkler system? Is that up to Parks and Recreation to? I know that you mentioned there would be some type of maintenance to upkeep the park. Is it are these trees? I see that there's going to be a lot of trees, so are they going to be manually watered, or is there going to be some type of sprinkler system? Because I know that over time, the park is going to that's going to be an important part of, kind of upkeeping the park and making it kind of stand out. And then on top of that, with the trees and the vegetation, is there some type of drainage system? Because obviously weather permitting, whether it's snow melting or rain, or just like a summer day where there's rain and then clouds clear and now you have the sun out. Is there a drainage system where people can still use the park without sitting around puddles and things like that? And then my fourth question is about the blue bike section. I understand that it's an initiative or a new thing where bikes, we want to do the metro bikes and things in cities and in different communities, but I also think that the community is changing to where not everyone is driving a car, and there are more people riding bikes, and with Columbus Ave changing and creating more bike lanes and such, people will be commuting more with bikes, and so I think that there should be not just accessibility for people who want to rent the bikes, but also for people who may want to ride their bike to this square and maybe park their bike. So is there going to be some type of maybe on the backside of the blue bikes, is there going to be some type of rail where people can lock up their bikes as well? I don't think that it should be inside the park per se, because I think you don't want just a bunch of bikes just sitting there piled up. But in that bike section, if there can also be a railing for bikes to be parked and secured while they're going to retail stores in the community, I think that would be great.
Just to contribute to what Robert said regarding signage and the grilling, I think I've seen it. The biggest issue right now is public drinking, and I believe we are on a school zone, so I think signage related to that will be important, so the police can also enforce those laws.
Sure. In terms of the signage, we do have a typical parks. No park in Boston are you allowed to drink. You're not allowed to smoke. You can't roller skate. Obviously not drive. No smoking. So we will have our typical rule sign up there. We can look into adding a no grilling symbol as well onto the sign. There are some parks in Boston that do allow grilling, I believe, but this obviously is not going to be one of those. So in terms of signage, we will have that sign up as well. The tree maintenance, the trees will be planted by the contractor. There will be, we don't plant fully mature trees. They have a tough time surviving in the new environment, but we're not also planting saplings. So there will be a typical size that we plant is a 2 to 3 inch caliber tree, which is a pretty hardy tree. And that tree is maintained by the contractor during the course of the construction project. And then there's a tree warranty for 2 years afterwards as well. So if anything happens to the tree, the contractor's responsibility to replace that tree for the 2 years after it's planted. And then it's taken on by the maintenance department, which does regular watering. They'll do regular mowings and regular maintenance of the rest of the landscape. In terms of the bikes, sorry, I'm trying to remember if I'm hitting all the points here. The bikes.
Yeah, sorry, it was a lot.
Yeah, no, that's all right. And
you answered my question. It was the trees, the trees, and the drainage system, and then the bike accessibility.
Yeah, we hadn't looked into that, but we can certainly look into that and see where we're landing with where that could be placed, or if it could be placed.
You're referring to the bikes, yes?
The bikes.
Yes.
Yes.
But there will be a drainage system, and we are going to grade the plaza so that water moves across it. And so it will not be puddling.
Okay.
We're still working out whether we are going to direct the water into the planting beds or whether it will go into a drain within the pavement. But we're thinking about it.
And all the drainage needs to be approved by the Boston Water and Sewer Commission. So there's, that oversight as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to get a couple, excuse me, questions in the chat. Susan asks, will there be water source for parks and friends to water plants and drinking fountain? Carol and Tracy, do you want to take that?
Both are in the budget, drinking fountain, and by making that water connection, we would have a hose bib available. We would keep it, I believe, locked, so it couldn't be used at any time by anyone, but for authorized use. I'm talking about the hose bib access, but drinking fountain would be available during the warm season. It's winterized from like November to May.
Ralph says, while poorly maintained, the stone cap keeps getting stuck and moved towards the park. Figure out where authority moves from parking to parks. Okay. Erica.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so I just wanted to say I missed a couple of meetings, so I'm a little back, behind you guys, but so far so good. Everything I'm hearing sounds great. A lot of people kind of answered some things that I had in my head as well, as far as the water and when Robbie talked about having the signs and stuff like that. So that was a good point as well. And then the final concept that you guys talked about at the beginning sounded great. Those are actually the two that I was leaning towards, was 1 and 3 as well. And then, the lighting situation, that I feel like that's pretty vital in all of this. I don't know exactly how that's, going to be included in there, but definitely lighting. And then the barber chair idea is awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, so, and I do like that wider entrance that he showed earlier. That was great. I love that. It's very open. And I mean, I don't have anything negative really to say. I mean, everything sounds great. It's moving along. I'm just happy that we're in this, space right now where we're, kind of coming to the finalization of it. So, yeah. And, as far as the quote stuff, I can definitely meet with them another day, like he said, in a smaller setting, just to give some more feedback on, who my dad was and stuff. So I'd be more than happy to assist with that. And yeah, everything sounds great. Thank you, everyone. This is like beautiful honor, and everyone's input to this whole project is awesome. So thank you all, and I'm happy. So thank you.
Can I also add to that? My aunt, thank you, Erica. That was
Yeah.
amazing. But you just gave me a thought. I know that I think it was Kyle who mentioned that there's going to be some input from the family as far as like what quotes are inputted into that stone. Is there a way that we can have the family could have some type of idea of the amount of words or space that we could suggest, so that we can just have a family meeting and kind of keep within that frame, for whatever quotes that we would like to suggest.
Certainly. I think the details of this need to be worked out some more before we can set parameters. And that's kind of the next step after this. It's getting into actually drawing out and detailing the different elements.
Thank you.
Yeah. Susan?
Thanks.
Oh.
I just wanted to underscore the comment about bike racks for other types of bikes, because I was thinking about that, and we had somebody's bike stolen there last summer or the summer before. But as people come and they use the park and there are events, if you can lock your bike up, that would really, I think, be very helpful. So I didn't hear a response to that idea, but hopefully you can find some place to have a couple of discrete, hoops in the ground or whatever they do, so that people can lock up bikes there if you bring your own bike.
Sure. Yeah. I think I mentioned we can explore that idea and figure out if there's locations of where that can go. Carolyn, hi.
Yeah, hi. Just seconding what everybody says about it's just so fun to see it all come together. And I do have a question, but I wanted to just note that this does what we wanted it to do, which is this is a place that can get activated. So if businesses want to hold an event there, businesses want to have a showcase or a special market day, or bring up pop-ups in here to attract customers, attract activity. If there wants to be an art pop-up, you'd have all this level space that's comfortable with seating and inviting to do those kind of social activities, because we don't want to just always stay in a defensive mode about the park. The park is like a positive plus place to bring people together. So I really like the design about that, the way that the vegetation already the vegetation shelters us from the parking lot a little bit because you pulled out the seating. But anyway, so it and the way the raised sidewalk will be, everything is going to work out good to have a lot of different kinds of events there. When do you think about what plants go in there? Because this park is always just such a green, welcoming green. So do we know yet what kind of plants go there other than I know about the trees going in, but do you know what kinds of things go in, what beds, or does that get worked out later?
That does get worked out later. And I think we have to think about durability, what isn't going to grow too high, doesn't require a lot of pruning. We want to leave spaces for the community too that has been very active here with planting, some spaces that are really good for you all to continue to work in as well. So that will be something that will happen over the next few months.
And are the boulders gone? So do we have any more use? Did we come up with any creative use for the boulders, or are they gone to rest in peace somewhere?
We had some thoughts for creative uses, but it was going to cost quite a bit of money, and it was going to take away from other things. So we didn't want to spend money on those things which weren't critical to the mission or the overall design. It would be nice to use them maybe, but we didn't think it was worth losing other parts of the park to modify those things.
Thank you. Going into the chat, Bob Grill says, along with the hose bib that would be locked is an electrical outlet for event use that is otherwise locked possible. I may have missed this if this was mentioned before. And Susan says, power for holiday lights also in native plants habitat. I am in discussions, weird discussions with street lighting. The lighting that will be in the park is on the street lighting grid, so it's kind of down to coordinating with street lighting about how that could work, whether it could work to how an outlet that's connected to the street lighting grid. So that's still a TBD item. I am working with street lighting to see how we could do that. We could do that.
A little bit related to public events, power outlet would be great.
Thank you.
One other question as well. You said earlier in the presentation you put a lot of thought into more uniform lighting. Are we able to see from these renderings, are there new lights that are going in, or how are we addressing that?
Yeah, there is a new light pole that we'll be using typical light fixtures that Boston Street Lighting has in their palette. But if in this view,
Sorry, there's two.
there's two light poles in the
You can only
dark.
see one at a time, but I swear there's two.
Yeah, in Lawson Park, there's it's generally fairly dim, and then there's a very dark spot in the back where Atherton Plaza is very bright with a few dark spots. So we're adding lighting to Lawson Park to be able to make sure that is uniform and adequately lit.
Okay, great.
Great. Any other questions or comments?
Oh, I did have one other question was on one of the earlier, maybe I missed it at the beginning. You had the name of the park on the stone. It was instead of just the green sign that the name was on one of the walls. Is that gone or?
I think we can incorporate the name in the park somewhere. Park standard is to have the green sign as the park name, but we're still talking about how we can incorporate the name within the park so it becomes a little more prominent as well. Susan says, could you use two of the stones as is? Either side of the wide entrance would protect the corners of the landscape from shortcuts. Kyle, Tracy, do you want to take that one?
I think I hear you on the shortcuts. I'm apprehensive to use those things because I think they wouldn't be unified with the rest of the design. So I'd feel like they were a little leftover or, yeah. So I think the shortcutting is important and we'll have to work on that part, but I don't think we would solve it with those granite blocks.
I guess we have some funny sentimental attachment, and it seems like it would cost money to move them away, but you're probably right.
And they won't be destroyed. They will most likely go to the park's maintenance yard to be hopefully reused somewhere else.
Okay.
Peter says maybe incorporate the granite blocks around the park with Robert Lawson quotes on them.
Yeah,
I
I
think-
can see that if you do anything other than just move them, that would cost a lot of money. Cutting them down or modifying them, or that could add up fast.
And the other thing is they take up a lot of space. And that's why they originally put there to take up space. And I think we want to take away that just fill up space with granite. Let's use it for people.
Great. Any other comments, questions?
I just have one more. I have one more question. Is the arrow that, or I don't know what exactly we're calling it, but the circle and the quotes that are facing towards the barbershop is with the illuminating lighting. Is there going to be some type of lighting in that design
There won't
at
be
night or whatever?
any lighting in that line, but there'll be new lighting in the park that will allow the whole plaza to be visible at night.
Okay.
Chris says Susan's question on community thoughts on the second Columbus Avenue entrance. I'm generally torn on it. I get that it helps open up the park, allows for better flow through the park, and makes it easier to see into the park, but it also opens it up to more traffic noise. Third.
Yeah, I think the issue of traffic noise is an important one to talk through. I mean, there's no ignoring that that street is there and it's going to be there and it's going to be busy. Traffic's going to be calmed with some of the improvements that are, and as part of the BTD improvements, the sidewalk's going to get a little wider and traffic's going to get slower. But I think, you know, ultimately, can we shield park users from cars or car noise? No, I think we have to make the park as comfortable and inviting and attractive as possible when you're in the park. I'm not sure the second entrance makes a huge difference in terms of traffic noise or exposure. I do like what it does in terms of flow, and there's no dead ends in the park, gives you options to come and go.
Susan says, does your plan reflect the modified intersection that BTD is working on? Could it be narrower 4 feet? Can you?
So Tracy, a question, are the curb lines shown here what BTD will do in the future, or are these existing curb lines?
BTD is there, that's existing curb lines. Atherton Street will get narrower with a wider sidewalk when BTD comes through. They are also creating a wider sidewalk on Columbus and a little bit onto Washington too. So there will be more sidewalk than is shown, yes. But their plans keep changing, so we didn't put it, but yeah.
I think they're still in the design phase of figuring this out. So
Well, so are we, but yeah.
yeah.
Because they're going to take away the parking on the section that is raised on Atherton. And they're basically going to make that people space. And so the part of Atherton that is left open between these two spaces will just be travel lane with, basically.
So Susan, you're asking, but you work to the property line. Yeah, we work, the property line is to the back of the sidewalk there. So anything from the back of the sidewalk to this, to the street, then to the opposite sidewalk, that's all BTD. Could the second entrance be narrower, 4 feet? What is the current entrance
It's
size?
currently shown at 6.
Okay. Yeah. Peter asks, can we please keep our little free library somewhere? Yes, we can relocate that. We'll as we get through like through design development, we'll take this into drawings. We can find the locations for like all the little items.
One other question for me on going back to the conversation about taking off the paint. Totally understand you don't want to put paint on Atherton if the city's just going to tear it up afterwards and repave it and raise it. But are we saying it wouldn't be worth it, or it wouldn't be cost effective to keep any sort of color on the concrete in the park itself, even if we can't touch Atherton?
We still have color on the pavement in the park itself. The yellow you're seeing on the edges there is in the pavement.
Sure. That's just obviously that is much reduced from your original concepts.
Just across the street of Atherton.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I thought there was more color within the main part of the park itself in those original designs. I may have been incorrect. Oh, okay.
Not substantially, no, I don't think so.
All right. Yep, my mistake.
Great. Any other questions? These have all been amazing questions. Thank you so much. All right. I think that's it for tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. From the next steps from here, the design team, we will go into design development drawings, and then we'll go into construction drawings. We're still looking at bidding in the fall for construction start in next spring. We're still on track with that as of right now. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'll drop my email in the chat once more. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your ideas, for your questions, for your continued commitment to this park. We really enjoyed hearing everything you have to say. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.